My name is Mary. I'm 68 years old. Standing at my daughter Amanda's wedding, I never expected to hear those words that would change everything. When that old lady ends up in a nursing home, the penthouse in Miami is ours. The knife of betrayal twisted deep as I realized my only child was waiting for me to die. I maintained my composure, smiled politely at nearby guests, and quietly walked away. A lifetime of sacrifice and love had led to this moment of painful clarity. Before I tell you what happened after I heard those cruel words from my only daughter, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to make a difficult family decision. I built my real estate empire from nothing after losing my husband John when Amanda was just 10 years old. At 35, I found myself a widow with a young daughter to raise and a mountain of debt John had hidden from me. His insurance barely covered the funeral expenses, leaving me to start over with almost nothing. Those early years were brutal. I worked 3 jobs initially: administrative assistant during weekdays, waiting tables at night, and selling small properties on commission during weekends. I would often come home after midnight to find our elderly neighbour, Mrs. Peterson, had put Amanda to bed. There were many nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was failing my daughter by not being there enough. What drove me forward was determination. John had always handled our finances, insisting it wasn't something I needed to worry about. After his death, I discovered his gambling debts and poor investments had left us nearly bankrupt. I promised myself that I would never be financially vulnerable again, and more importantly, that Amanda would have every opportunity in life. When I sold my first major commercial property at 37 and cleared $50,000 in commission, I invested every penny in a foreclosed triplex. I lived in one unit, rented the other 2, and used that income to purchase more distressed properties. By the time Amanda was 15, I had built Williams Real Estate into a respectable local business with 8 employees. Amanda and I were incredibly close during those years. She would sit at my desk after school doing homework while I made calls to clients. She understood when I missed her school events because I was showing properties, and she'd listen wide-eyed when I explained my latest deal. I taught her everything I knew about business, believing she might take over the company someday. "Mom, you're like a superhero," she once told me when she was about 12. "Dad left us with nothing, and now look at everything you've built." Those words had meant everything to me, fueling countless late nights and 7-day work weeks. Every sacrifice was worth it. When I saw Amanda thriving, getting into a prestigious college with a business scholarship, I was nevertheless able to supplement so she wouldn't need student loans. Everything changed when Amanda met Jackson during her junior year of college. His family had an impressive name but had lost most of their fortune through poor business decisions 2 generations back. They maintained the facade of wealth while living on credit. The first time I met Jackson and his parents, alarm bells rang loudly in my head. They asked far too many questions about my business, my properties, and my plans for retirement. "Your mother has done quite well for herself," Jackson's father commented to Amanda at that first dinner, eyes assessing me like I was a stock portfolio rather than a person. I watched my daughter gradually transform during her relationship with Jackson. The ambitious, compassionate girl who once volunteered at homeless shelters with me began fixating on status symbols, designer clothes, luxury cars, exclusive clubs. She took internships, not for the learning experience, but for the prestigious names she could add to her resume. By the time she graduated and they got engaged, Amanda had begun making comments about my retirement and family assets that troubled me deeply. "Mum, you should really consider putting the penthouse in Miami under both our names for tax purposes," she suggested 3 months after her engagement. That penthouse was my dream retirement home, purchased after 20 years of hard work. Worth $4.5 million, it represented everything I had accomplished. I'm not ready to think about that yet, honey, I replied. I'm only 66 and plan to enjoy that place for many years. The flash of irritation on her face should have warned me, but mothers can be blind when it comes to their children. 2 years ago, I had a minor stroke. It was frightening but not debilitating, a warning sign to reduce stress and take better care of myself. Elena, who had been my housekeeper for 5 years, stepped in to help as my caregiver during recovery. She was 60, a hard-working immigrant from Guatemala who had raised 3 successful children on her own after her husband abandoned them. We bonded during my recovery, becoming friends rather than just employer and employee. When I called Amanda from the hospital, her first question wasn't about my health. "Did you update your will recently?" she asked. After a brief, "Are you okay?" I was stunned into silence before murmuring that I was fine and would call her back later. Elena saw my tears after that call. "Miss Mary," she said quietly, "sometimes people show us who they really are in a crisis. The question is whether we choose to see it." The wedding planning revealed even more about who Amanda had become. She insisted on an extravagant ceremony costing over $200,000, which I paid for without complaint. When I suggested using my company's event planner, who had arranged all our corporate functions beautifully, Amanda scoffed. "Mother, we need someone who works with the right clientele," she said dismissively. "Your business connections are fine for commercial real estate, but this is my wedding." Still, I held on to hope that our relationship could heal. I cherished memories of the little girl who would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who made me birthday cards, promising I would never end up in a nursing home like her friend's grandmother, because we'll always take care of each other. I couldn't reconcile that child with the woman who now seemed to see me primarily as a source of wealth and status. But mothers are eternal optimists when it comes to their children. I kept believing the real Amanda was still there underneath the influence of Jackson and his family. The morning of Amanda's wedding, I woke at dawn after a restless night. Looking out at the sunrise from my bedroom window, I allowed myself to hope this day might mark a new beginning for us. Perhaps becoming a wife would soften Amanda's materialistic edge and remind her of the values I had tried to instill. Elena helped me dress in the pale blue designer gown Amanda had insisted upon. "You look beautiful, Miss Mary," she said, adjusting the pearl necklace John had given me on our first anniversary. "Thank you, Elena." I squeezed her hand. "I don't know what I would do without you." Her dark eyes, wise from her own life struggles, met mine in the mirror. "You are stronger than you know." I arrived at the Vineyard Estate 2 hours before the ceremony as requested. The venue cost $40,000 for the day, a fact Amanda had mentioned repeatedly. Guests would be arriving to classical string quartet, music champagne flowing from fountains, and flower arrangements costing more than my first car. The bridal suite was chaotic when I entered. Bridesmaids in various states of preparation, makeup artists and hairstylists working feverishly champagne bottles, already half empty. "Mum, finally," Amanda said, barely looking up from her phone. "Your hair appointment is in 20 minutes. The photographer wants family photos at 11:30 sharp. No hug, no moment of mother-daughter connection on this momentous day. You look radiant, sweetheart," I said, blinking back tears. She glanced up briefly. "Thanks. Did you bring the sapphire earrings? They're my something borrowed." The earrings had been my mother's, one of the few heirlooms I had left. "Yes, right here." I handed her the velvet box, hoping for a shared memory of my mother, but Amanda just passed them to her maid of honor, with instructions to have them ready after her makeup was done. The ceremony itself was undeniably beautiful. Amanda was a stunning bride in her custom gown as she walked down the aisle alone. She had declined my offer to escort her, saying it wasn't traditional enough. I sat in the front row, smiling through tears, still the proud mother despite everything. During the vows, I noticed Jackson's father watching me rather than the couple, his expression calculating. The unease I felt then should have prepared me for what was to come. At the reception, I discovered I wasn't seated at the main table with the wedding party, but at a table far from the centre with distant relatives of Jackson's family. When I mentioned the seating arrangement to Amanda during our brief formal photos, she shrugged. "The planner handled all that, Mum. I'm sure it's fine where you are." After dinner and the obligatory first dances, I found myself standing alone near the gift table, watching my daughter laugh with her new husband and his friends. They looked like a photo from a society magazine, beautiful, polished, exclusive. I felt suddenly old and out of place despite my designer dress and professionally applied makeup. I decided to find Amanda and tell her I was leaving early, feeling tired from the emotional day. That's when I overheard their conversation. They were standing just around the corner from where I was apparently unaware of my presence. "When do you think we can start renovating the Miami place?" Jackson asked, his voice slightly slurred from champagne. "As soon as we figure out what to do about Mother," Amanda replied. "Thomas says her will leaves everything split between me and those ridiculous charities she supports. Can't you convince her to change it? She adores you." Amanda laughed, a sound so cold it froze my heart. "Please, she's getting more stubborn as she gets older. That stroke last year should have been a wake-up call for her to start transferring assets, but she's being difficult." "Well, she's almost 70? Jackson's voice dropped slightly, but not enough. "When that old lady ends up in a nursing home, the penthouse in Miami is ours." "Exactly," Amanda agreed. "The doctor said her blood pressure issues mean she'll likely have another stroke. Next time she might not recover so well. We just need to be patient." "And then we get it all?" Jackson asked. "Everything. The company, the properties, the investments. At least 30 million. I've made sure I'm the only beneficiary on her newest accounts." I stood perfectly still, feeling as though I'd been turned to stone. The surrounding noises of the reception faded to a distant hum as those cruel words echoed in my mind. My child, my only child, was waiting for me to die or become incapacitated so she could take everything I had built. Somehow I managed to maintain my composure. Years of business negotiations had taught me to hide my emotions when necessary. I straightened my spine, took a deep breath, and walked past them with my head held high. Their conversation halted abruptly when they saw me. "Mother!" Amanda's voice held false brightness. "Are you enjoying yourself?" I looked into her eyes, John's eyes, and saw nothing of the daughter I had raised. "I'm afraid I need to leave early. Congratulations on your beautiful wedding." Without waiting for a response, I walked away, each step carrying me not just from the reception, but from the illusion that had been our relationship. In the parking lot, tears finally came. Eleanor found me there, having sensed something was wrong when she saw me leaving. "Miss Mary," her gentle hand on my shoulder broke the last of my control. She listened without interruption as I told her what I had overheard, then helped me into the car with quiet dignity. "Let me drive you home," she said, taking my keys. As we pulled away from the lavish celebration, I didn't look back. The drive home from the wedding venue was silent, except for my occasional muffled sobs. Eleanor kept her eyes on the road respectfully, allowing me the space to process what had happened. The evening sky had turned a deep purple, the same colour as the expensive hydrangeas that had adorned Amanda's reception tables. Once home, the facade of composure I had maintained crumbled completely. I sank onto my living room sofa, still in my formal gown, and wept like I hadn't since John died. The betrayal cut deeper than any business setback or personal loss I had ever experienced. "She's been waiting for me to die," I whispered to Elena, who sat quietly beside me, my own child. "Miss Mary," Eleanor said finally, "people who see others only as a means to wealth never find true happiness themselves. Your daughter has lost something far more valuable than she will ever gain from your money." Those wise words provided little comfort that night, but they would return to me in the days ahead. I barely slept replaying not just the overhead conversation, but countless interactions with Amanda over the years. How had I missed the signs? When had my ambitious, loving daughter transformed into someone who could coldly discuss my eventual demise as a financial opportunity? By morning, my grief had crystallized into something harder. I spent Sunday looking through old photo albums, tracing Amanda's childhood through pictures. The gap between the smiling child in those images and the woman at yesterday's wedding seemed unbridgeable. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from wedding guests who had noticed my early departure. I responded to none of them. Around noon, a text from Amanda arrived. Great party last night, flying to Bali this morning for honeymoon. The gift from your company associates was too small for what Jackson expected, but I covered for you. Talk when we're back in 3 weeks. No inquiry about why I had left early. No thank you for the $200,000 wedding. Just disappointment that my colleague's gift hadn't met her husband's expectations. I set the phone down and turned to Elena, who had insisted on staying with me despite it being her day off. "I've been a fool," I said quietly. "No, Miss Mary, you have been a mother. Mothers see the best in their children even when no one else can." I spent the remainder of Sunday sorting through financial documents, reviewing my will, and contemplating what came next. By evening, a plan had begun to form. Not from vengeance, but from clarity. "Would you come with me to my attorney's office tomorrow?" I asked Elena as she prepared to leave for the night. "Of course," she replied without hesitation. "Whatever you need." That night, I sat on my balcony looking at the stars, thinking about the true meaning of wealth and legacy. I had built my company from nothing, driven by 2 purposes: providing for Amanda and proving to myself that I could overcome the financial vulnerability John's death had exposed. The first reason had been corrupted. The second no longer seemed important. What would wealth mean if it only served to turn my child into someone who could speak so callously about my decline? What legacy would I leave if my assets merely fueled the materialistic values that had already consumed Amanda? As the night deepened, I found myself evaluating my own worth beyond the properties I owned or the company I had built. Who was Mary Williams without her money? It was time to find out. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, a cruel contrast to the darkness I felt within. I dressed with purpose, choosing a business suit I often wore to important negotiations. Today would be the most significant negotiation of my life, not for money, but for my own peace. Thomas Richardson had been my attorney for over 20 years, handling everything from business contracts to my estate planning. His downtown office felt familiar and safe as Elena and I were shown in promptly at 9. "Mary," Thomas stood to greet me with concern evident on his face. "I heard you left Amanda's wedding early. Is everything all right?" "No, Thomas, everything is not all right, but it will be." I took a seat back, straight hands steady. "I need to make some changes to my will and estate plan, immediately." For the next 2 hours, I outlined exactly what I wanted to do. Thomas listened with increasing surprise, taking detailed notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Are you absolutely certain about this?" he asked when I had finished. "These changes are substantial and likely irreversible in terms of your relationship with Amanda." "I'm certain," I replied. "The relationship I thought we had doesn't exist. I'm simply acknowledging that reality and adjusting my plans accordingly." By noon, Thomas had drafted preliminary documents for the creation of a new charitable foundation in John's name. The Williams Family Foundation would receive 80% of my estate with specific directives for supporting single mothers, starting businesses, educational scholarships, and affordable housing initiatives. "What about the penthouse in Miami?" Thomas asked. "Convert it to the foundation's headquarters. The location will be perfect for the entrepreneurship program for women I want to establish." Thomas nodded, making notes. "And the Aspen vacation home, sell it and put the proceeds into the foundation's endowment." As we worked through each property and investment, I felt a growing sense of lightness. The weight of Amanda's betrayal remained, but alongside it grew something new: purpose. After leaving Thomas's office, Eleanor and I met with my financial advisor, Blake Thompson. His reaction to my new plans mirrored Thomas's initial shock, but he quickly adapted and helped restructure my investments to align with my new priorities. "I'll need to maintain enough personal assets to live comfortably," I explained, "but nothing extravagant." "Of course," Blake agreed, running calculations. "Based on your current holdings, we can allocate approximately $4 million for your personal use and security while transferring the bulk to the foundation. You'll maintain complete control of the foundation, of course. And I want to establish a trust for Elena," I added, ignoring her gasp of surprise. "She's been more family to me than—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Miss Mary, that's not necessary," Elena protested. I turned to her with resolve. "It is absolutely necessary. You've shown me more loyalty and compassion than those who should have loved me most." By late afternoon, we had begun the process of changing locks and security codes at the penthouse and other properties. I called my assistant to begin inventory of personal belongings, separating items of sentimental value from those that could be donated. Throughout the day, Amanda called repeatedly. I sent each call to voicemail, not yet ready for that confrontation. My phone also rang with calls from charitable organizations as word began to spread about my plans for major donations. The Miami Community Foundation is thrilled about your interest in their women's business initiative, my assistant reported. "They've scheduled a presentation for Wednesday if you're available." "Perfect," I replied. "And what about the Educational Trust for Service Industry Workers? The paperwork is being prepared as we speak." As evening approached, Elena and I returned to my home. I felt exhausted but clear-headed for the first time since the wedding. "What will you do now, Miss Mary?" Elena asked as she prepared a light dinner for us both. "First, I think it's time you called me just Mary." I smiled faintly. "And second, I'm thinking about that trip to Portugal we talked about. Remember, after my stroke, you showed me that article about the coastal villages and said someday we should visit?" "I remember." Eleanor nodded, eyes bright with unshed tears. "But I meant as your employee." "I was thinking more as my friend," I replied. "Life is too short to delay dreams, as I've been painfully reminded." Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of the security system announcing someone at the gate. The camera showed Amanda's car. "You don't have to see her tonight," Elena said protectively. "Yes, I do." I straightened my shoulders. "Some conversations can't be postponed." When I opened the door, Amanda stood there still in travel clothes, her face a mask of concerned daughter. "Mother, why haven't you been answering your phone?" We were about to board our flight when I got a strange call from Uncle Thomas's office about paperwork. She pushed past me into the foyer. "What's going on?" The confrontation I had been preparing for all day had arrived. Amanda stalked into my living room with the confidence of someone who believed they owned the space. Her designer luggage remained in the car. This wasn't meant to be a long visit, just a quick intervention before continuing to her honeymoon. "Mother, what is going on?" Thomas's assistant mentioned something about the foundation paperwork being rushed through. She dropped her handbag on the sofa, irritation clear in every movement. "Whatever it is can surely wait until we get back from Bali." I remained standing, hands clasped in front of me. "I'm making some changes to my estate planning, Amanda. Nothing that concerns you anymore." She paused, registering my tone. "What do you mean, any more?" "I heard you and Jackson at the reception," I said simply, "about the old lady ending up in a nursing home and you getting the penthouse in Miami, about waiting for my next stroke." The colour drained from her face, replaced quickly by defensive anger. "You were eavesdropping on my private conversation." "It was hardly private when you were discussing my death loudly enough for me to hear, while standing a few feet away." Amanda's strategy shifted instantly. "Mother, you completely misunderstood. Jackson was drunk and saying silly things. I was just humouring him. Was he also drunk 3 months ago when you suggested putting the penthouse in both our names, or last year when you asked about my will after my stroke instead of my health? My voice remained steady, though my heart was breaking anew. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. Amanda's eyes narrowed. Is this why you left the wedding early, to punish me over a misunderstanding? It wasn't a misunderstanding, Amanda. It was clarity. After years of refusing to see who you've become, I finally heard the truth in your own words. I gestured toward the chair. Please sit down. We need to have an honest conversation. She remained standing, defiant. What changes are you making with Thomas? I'm establishing the Williams Family Foundation. Most of my assets will be transferred to it, effective immediately. What? Her voice rose sharply. You can't do that. That's my inheritance. It was never yours, Amanda. It was always mine to decide what to do with. This is about Jackson, isn't it? Her tone turned accusatory. You've never liked him or his family. You're punishing me for marrying someone you disapprove of. This has nothing to do with Jackson and everything to do with you calculating the timing of my death as a financial opportunity. The words hurt to say out loud, but they needed to be spoken. Amanda switched tactics again, her eyes filling with tears. Mommy, please, I didn't mean any of it. You know how people say stupid things sometimes. She reached for my hand. You're my mother. I love you. I stepped back from her touch. The daughter I raised would never have spoken those words, drunk or sober. She would never have seen me as a financial asset to be liquidated at death. Elena entered quietly from the kitchen, her presence providing silent support. Amanda's facade dropped instantly. Oh, I see what's happening here. She glared at Elena. She's turned you against me. What has she been telling you? What is she getting out of all this? Eleanor has told me nothing except the truth about loyalty and respect, I replied. She's shown me more genuine care during my recovery than you have in years. So, your housekeeper is getting my inheritance. Amanda's voice had turned ugly. Is that what this is about? Elena is my friend, and yes, I've established a trust for her security, but the majority of what you call your inheritance will help people who actually need it. Single mothers building businesses, students who can't afford education, families needing affordable housing. Amanda's tears vanished, replaced by cold fury. I'll contest this. You've clearly lost your mind since the stroke. Any court will see that. Every medical report shows I'm fully competent, as Thomas has already confirmed. I maintained eye contact despite her increasing hostility. The changes are legally binding. After everything I've done for you, she hissed. What exactly have you done for me, Amanda? When I was recovering from my stroke, you visited twice in 3 weeks. Elena was there every day. When I needed someone to talk to after business setbacks, you were too busy with social events to take my calls. So that's it. You're choosing your staff over your daughter, your only family. I'm choosing to leave a legacy that reflects my values, not enabling behavior that goes against everything I taught you. Amanda grabbed her bag, trembling with shame. Jackson's father was right about you. Stubborn and difficult, getting worse with age. She moved toward the door. This isn't over. I'm calling our lawyer the minute I leave here. It is over, Amanda. I've already signed everything. I followed her to the door, maintaining my composure despite the pain tearing through me. And just so you know, I've donated the penthouse in Miami to be converted into a center for women entrepreneurs. You and Jackson won't be getting it when I end up in a nursing home. She spun around, hand raised as if to slap me, then stopped herself. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone with no family, you'll regret choosing strangers over your own daughter. I already regret many things, I said quietly, but this decision isn't one of them. After she stormed out, I slowly closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing my tears to fall freely. Eleanor stood nearby, respectful of my grief, but present in her support. "You did what was right, Miss Mary," she said softly. "Not easy, but right." Later that evening, Jackson called his approach smoother and more calculated than Amanda's emotional assault. "Mary, we need to talk about this misunderstanding," he began, voice dripping with false concern. "There's nothing to discuss, Jackson. Goodbye." I hung up and blocked his number. That night, I slept better than I had in years, despite the heartache. The truth, even painful truth, had set something free within me. The days following my confrontation with Amanda unfolded with surprising swiftness. Thomas expedited the legal changes to my estate. Blake restructured my investments, and the foundation paperwork was filed with remarkable efficiency. "We've retained Catherine Spencer as the foundation's executive director," Thomas informed me 3 days after the wedding. "She has extensive experience with non-profit management and shares your vision completely." I met with Catherine that same afternoon, a dynamic woman in her 50s who had built several successful charitable organizations. "Mrs. Williams, your foundation concept is exactly what this community needs," she said, reviewing the mission statement we had crafted. "Focusing on economic empowerment rather than temporary assistance will create lasting change." The first major donation we arranged was a grant program for single mothers starting small businesses. Having been one myself, I understood the unique challenges they faced. Each recipient will receive not just funding, but mentorship and business education, Catherine explained. "We'll partner with the community college for certifications and technical training." As the foundation took shape, word spread quickly through my business circles. Former competitors and colleagues reached out, many expressing admiration for this new direction. "Always knew you were more than just a savvy investor, Mary," said Robert Johnson, my longtime business rival. "This foundation will outlast any building you could have constructed." Of course, not all responses were positive. Amanda and Jackson returned early from their honeymoon to consult with attorneys about contesting my decisions. Through Thomas, I learned they were exploring claims of undue influence and diminished capacity. "They don't have a case," Thomas assured me. "Your medical records clearly show you're mentally sound and all decisions have been properly documented with multiple witnesses." Nevertheless, the legal threats cast a shadow over what should have been an exciting new chapter. The pain of Amanda's betrayal remained fresh, a wound that seemed unlikely to heal. One unexpected development was the media attention. A local business journal ran a feature about successful executives transitioning to philanthropy, with my foundation as the centerpiece. The article mentioned Amanda only in passing, noting that Williams's only daughter is not involved in the foundation's operations. That article led to others, and soon my phone was ringing with requests for interviews and speaking engagements about second acts and meaningful legacies. I declined most, but agreed to speak at a women's business luncheon about resilience and reinvention. "Your story will inspire so many people," the organizer told me, "especially women who have faced betrayal and had to rebuild." The day after the Business Journal article appeared, Amanda showed up at my door again, this time with a different approach. "Mother, I've been thinking about our conversation," she began, voice honey-sweet. "I may have overreacted. Of course you should have a foundation if that's important to you." I invited her in, curious about this new tactic. "The article about your foundation was so impressive," she continued. "Everyone at the club was talking about it. Jackson and I are very supportive of philanthropy, you know." "Are you?" I kept my tone neutral. "Absolutely. In fact, we were thinking I could join the foundation board. With my business degree and connections, I could be a tremendous asset." The irony of her using that word, asset, wasn't lost on me. "The board is already established, Amanda. Catherine has selected members with extensive non-profit experience." Her smile tightened. "But surely the founder's daughter should have a place. It would look strange to outsiders if I'm not involved." Perhaps it would have been natural before, but circumstances have changed. I met her gaze steadily. You made your priorities very clear at your wedding. Mother, I told you that was a misunderstanding. Jackson was drunk. I was just humoring him. And what about asking about my will instead of my health after my stroke? Was that also a misunderstanding? She had no ready answer for that. Amanda, I said gently, the foundation represents values I believed we shared: compassion, generosity, using privilege to help others. If you truly want to be involved, demonstrate those values in your own life first. She left without further argument, but I harbored no illusions that our conflict was resolved. The daughter I had known and loved seemed gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Elena, who had been tactfully absent during Amanda's visit, found me later in my study reviewing foundation paperwork. She will try again, Elena observed quietly. Yes, but not because she's had a change of heart. The foundation is getting attention, and Amanda has always craved the spotlight. I set down my pen with a sigh. Part of me still hopes that someday she'll understand what really matters. Perhaps she will, with time and the right example, Elena said. You're showing her a different path, even if she's not ready to see it. That conversation led to my next major decision, selling my company to an employee ownership program. Williams Real Estate had been my life's work, but it was time to pass it on to people who would continue its ethical approach to business. The sale was structured to benefit long-term employees significantly while ensuring the company's stability. My executive team, many of whom had been with me for decades, embraced the transition enthusiastically. You built something special here, Mary, my COO said during the announcement meeting. We'll honor that legacy while taking the company forward. With the business transition underway and the foundation establishing its programs, I found myself with something I'd rarely experienced: free time. Elena encouraged me to revisit interests I'd abandoned during my years of single-minded focus on business and parenting. You used to paint, no? She reminded me, having seen old canvases in my storage room. Lifetime ago, I admitted. I was actually quite good before life got in the way. The next day, she surprised me with an easel, paints and brushes. Perhaps it's time to begin again. As summer turned to fall, I discovered a new rhythm to life. Mornings were spent on foundation matters, afternoons often at the easel or exploring other long-neglected interests. I reconnected with old friends who had no agenda regarding my wealth, finding genuine connection that had nothing to do with business advantages. The first holiday season approached with both dread and curiosity. It would be my first without family obligations, without pretending that Amanda and I shared a close relationship we hadn't had in years. Will you go to your daughter's for Thanksgiving? Elena asked, as November began. No invitation has been extended, I replied, and honestly, I'm not sure I would accept if it were. Instead, the foundation hosted a Thanksgiving event for program participants and their families. Sitting among single mothers and their children, sharing stories of challenges and triumphs, I felt more at home than I had at Amanda's perfectly styled dinner parties. You've changed my life, one young woman told me, her 2 small children playing nearby. Last year, I was working 3 jobs and barely seeing my kids. Now my business is taking off and I can actually be present for them. Her words healed something in me that Amanda's betrayal had broken. Perhaps my legacy wouldn't be what I had imagined, but it might be something even more meaningful. 1 year after Amanda's wedding, I stood on the balcony of what had once been my Miami penthouse, now transformed into the Women's Business Center. The stunning ocean view that had once represented my personal success now served as inspiration for aspiring entrepreneurs gathering in the conference room behind me. Mrs. Williams, the opening ceremony will begin in 15 minutes, Catherine said, joining me on the balcony. Thank you. I'll be right there. I took one last moment alone with my thoughts, reflecting on the extraordinary year that had passed. The foundation had exceeded all expectations, already supporting 32 single mothers, in launching businesses, providing scholarships for 68 students, and breaking ground on our first affordable housing development. What had begun as a response to betrayal had evolved into a mission with purpose far beyond my personal pain. Amanda and I had settled into a distant formal relationship. After her attorneys confirmed she had no grounds to contest my decisions, she had attempted reconciliation on several occasions, each overture clearly motivated by public relations rather than genuine remorse. "People keep asking me about the foundation," she complained during one brief visit. "It's embarrassing that I know nothing about it." "I send you the quarterly reports and newsletters," I replied. "The information is available if you're interested." Our interactions remained strained, limited to occasional phone calls and even rarer visits, always on my terms. The unconditional love I felt for her as her mother remained, but it was now tempered by clear boundaries and realistic expectations. Elena had become not just a friend, but a valued Foundation board member, her practical wisdom and compassion informing our programs in crucial ways. She had moved into the guest house on my property. At my insistence, though, she maintained her independence fiercely. "You have given me security I never dreamed of," she told me. "But more important, you have given me purpose in this work we do together." My own health had improved significantly. Without the stress of running the company and maintaining illusions about my relationship with Amanda, my blood pressure normalized, and I had more energy than I'd experienced in years. My doctor was pleased, but not surprised. "Emotional well-being is powerful medicine," he observed during my last checkup. "Whatever changes you've made, keep making them." The most unexpected development had been finding joy again, not just purpose or satisfaction, but genuine joy in simple pleasures. My renewed painting friendships, both old and new, even mundane daily activities that I had rushed through for decades. Inside the former penthouse, now buzzing with activity, a cohort of women entrepreneurs were graduating from our first intensive business program. Many had overcome extraordinary obstacles, domestic violence, homelessness, health crises, to build something meaningful for themselves and their families. As I prepared to address them, I caught sight of a familiar face in the back of the room. Amanda stood awkwardly by the entrance, dressed impeccably as always, but uncharacteristically hesitant. Our eyes met across the room. I gave a small nod of acknowledgement, but continued toward the podium. Her presence was noteworthy, but wouldn't alter the significance of this day for the women we were celebrating. "Welcome to the first graduation ceremony of the Williams Foundation Women's Entrepreneurship Program." I began addressing the graduates and their families. 1 year ago, this space represented something very different to me. It was a symbol of personal achievement, a reward for decades of hard work. The audience listened attentively, unaware of the deeper story behind my words. Today, it represents something far more valuable possibility. The possibility that with the right support, determination can overcome any obstacle, that past struggles don't determine future success, that it's never too late to redefine what matters most. From the corner of my eye, I saw Amanda listening, her expression unreadable. "Each of you has shown extraordinary courage," I continued, turning to the graduates, "not just in building your businesses, but in reimagining your lives. You've proven that our greatest challenges often lead to our most meaningful transformations." After the ceremony, as the graduates celebrated with their families, Amanda approached me cautiously. "That was an impressive speech," she said. "These women clearly admire you." "They admire themselves as they should," I replied. "They've done the hard work." An awkward silence stretched between us. "I've been doing some thinking," Amanda finally said, "about everything that happened last year, about who I was becoming." I waited, not making it easier for her, but not walking away either. "Jackson and I separated 3 months ago," she continued. "After the prenup prevented him from accessing my trust fund, he showed his true colours pretty quickly." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. No matter what she had done, I never wanted my daughter to experience pain. Are you? She looked surprised. After everything I said and did, you're my daughter, Amanda. That hasn't changed, even if our relationship has. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. I don't deserve your compassion. Compassion isn't about deserving, I said quietly. It's about recognizing humanity even in those who have hurt us. We stood in silence again, the weight of a year's estrangement between us. I don't expect you to forgive me, Amanda said finally. I'm not sure I would in your position. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to change. Seeing what you've built here, the lives you're impacting, it's made me question everything I thought was important. Change takes time, I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting her overture. And it's proven through consistent actions, not words. She nodded. I understand. I should go and let you get back to your event. As she turned to leave, I added, the Foundation hosts volunteer days on the first Saturday of each month if you're interested in learning more about our work. A small olive branch, neither a full reconciliation nor a complete rejection. Thank you, she said softly. I'll be there. Whether she would follow through remained to be seen. The path to rebuilding trust, if possible at all, would be long and uncertain. But for the first time, I saw a glimmer of the daughter I had raised beneath the person she had become. Later that evening, Eleanor and I sat on the beach near the Foundation building, watching the sunset paint the ocean in brilliant oranges and pinks. Do you think she meant it? Elena asked. About changing? I don't know, I answered honestly. People can change if they truly want to, but it has to come from within. We'll see if her actions match her words. And if they don't, I considered this carefully before responding, then I'll continue living this new life I've found, which has brought me more peace and purpose than I ever expected. The penthouse in Miami wasn't just about real estate. It was about the dreams I had for my family. But when I donated it, I found something far more valuable than property. I discovered my own worth beyond what I could give to others. Sometimes the most painful betrayals lead us to our truest purpose if we have the courage to walk away and rebuild with dignity. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that broke your heart, but ultimately led to unexpected healing? Share your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of transformation and renewal. Remember, it's never too late to redefine your legacy and find meaning beyond betrayal. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your worth in every relationship.